I am Lenora Ashby, 68 years old. On Mother's Day, my daughter sent a message to the family group chat at 7:43 in the morning. I will tell you exactly what it said. We've booked the venue, Harborview Arts Center, Sunday brunch for 14, private dining room. You're covering it like always. It's Mother's Day after all. I read it twice. Then I set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. In the house my husband Frank and I had painted ourselves the summer our son was born, and I watched my hands for a moment. They were not shaking. I typed back 6 words, "Lovely, I'm flying to Ottawa." My daughter replied in 9 seconds, "Mum, don't be dramatic." My son sent a thumbs down emoji. My daughter-in-law added a single laughing face. They thought I was bluffing. What not one of them had thought to ask, in 23 years, was whether the room they had just booked already knew my name. By the time the server brought them the bill that Sunday evening, every person seated in that dining room would know it too. Welcome to Fierce Mom Stories. It was a Saturday morning, the last one in April, the weekend before Mother's Day. The kitchen smelled of coffee and cedar from the firewood Frank used to stack against the back wall, a habit I had kept long after he stopped being here to stack it. I poured myself a cup, black, and stood at the window that faces the harbor. Halifax was gray and still, the way it gets in early May before the light decides what kind of summer it wants to be. My phone buzzed 4 times in quick succession. The family group chat, the one I had been quiet in for 11 weeks. I read my daughter's message, then my son's follow-up. "Card on file is yours, same as always." Then my daughter-in-law, "Dress appropriately, it's upscale." And then my daughter's sister-in-law, a woman I had met 3 times in 4 years, a row of champagne glass emojis. I set the phone down. I thought about last Mother's Day. The restaurant in the South End, $3,400 on my visa. My daughter spent most of the meal scrolling. My son's wife talked about a kitchen renovation. Nobody asked how I was doing. 2 years before that, the private room at the hotel on Barrington Street, $2,900, and my son gave a toast that did not include my name. I remembered standing in this same kitchen on my 65th birthday at 11:30 at night, eating half a scone I had bought for myself at the farmer's market that morning because no one had remembered, and thinking, how does a woman become furniture in her own family's life? I picked up the phone, typed 6 words, put it back down. Then I walked down the hall to Frank's study. I should tell you about Dr. Osi first. The previous November, I was leaving the post office on Spring Garden Road when my left knee gave out, not dramatically, just a sudden, private failure, and I sat on a bench for longer than I needed to, watching pigeons, which is not something I had ever done before. My GP is 42 years old and takes notes in a pale green paper notebook rather than on a screen, which I have always found reassuring. She sat across from me at my follow-up and said, "Your joint is fine, Lenora. I want to talk about the other thing." "What other thing?" She turned the notebook toward me. On the page, she had written a single question. "When did you last do something only for yourself?" I looked at the window. There was a spruce tree outside, bare in November, ice beginning at the lower tips. "I'm not your priest," she said. "I'm your doctor. But your cortisol is high and your blood pressure is creeping upward. The body keeps score." She clicked her pen, set it down. "When do you live, not just manage?" I drove home. I did not call my daughter. I made a pot of lentil soup and ate it alone at the kitchen table where I had eaten alone for 3 years. 4 days later, I called a number I had not dialed in 14 months. Quentin Voss, founding board chair of the Harborview Arts Center, and the closest thing to a co-conspirator I have ever had. "Quentin," I said, "if the offer is still open, I'd like to talk." Frank's study was the room at the back of the house, overlooking the garden. He had kept it orderly in the way of engineers. Every folder labeled, every book returned to its shelf. He died 3 years ago, in January, of a cardiac arrest so swift that the paramedics said he was likely already gone when the neighbor called. He had been shoveling the front path. He never came inside. The folder I had been avoiding was on the bottom shelf. I had been sorting his papers for 6 weeks. This one was labeled, in his careful handwriting, Harborview, Original. I sat down in his chair and opened it. Inside, the founding grant application we had written together at this very desk in 1997. The lease agreement for the building on Barrington Street. A photograph taken at the opening reception in October 1998 of Frank and me standing in front of the entrance, both of us thinner and more frightened than we looked. And a letter, folded once, on the cream notepaper he used for everything important. I should tell you I did not read it that morning. I set it down in the folder, sat in his chair, looked at the garden, and thought about what 25 years of a thing actually looks like from the inside. I opened the Harborview Arts Center in October 1998 with a federal grant of $62,000, a provincial top-up of $28,000, 3 board members who were also close friends, and Frank's engineering salary covering the gap between what we had and what we needed. For 16 years, I was the executive director. We grew from a single exhibition space into a 4-floor building with 2 gallery wings, a professional black box theater, a ceramics studio, and a community teaching program that now serves 1,100 Haligonians a year. The board named the main hall after Frank when he died, the Franklin Ashby Hall. I asked them not to, they did it anyway. The smaller private dining room, the one the Arts Center rents for galas and corporate bookings. They named after me in 2022, the year I stepped back from the board. The Lenora Ashby Room. I was not present at the naming. I did not publicize it. My daughter knew I had been involved in arts administration. She described me at her husband's firm Christmas party in 2019 as retired. She used to do nonprofit work. My son knew slightly more. He called it the arts thing you and Dad did. His wife had not asked me a single direct question about it in 5 years of knowing me. The Harborview Arts Center was where they had just booked the Mother's Day brunch. The private dining room. The Lenora Ashby Room. Now I want to tell you about my grandson. He is 17. My daughter's son. He has his grandfather's eyes, careful and very dark, and his grandfather's habit of going very quiet when he is thinking hard. He came to stay with me for a week in March, during his school break, while my daughter was at a conference in Toronto. On the second morning, while I was at the market on Quinpool Road, he found the attic. I knew he had been up there. The latch on the pull-down stairs was turned the wrong way. The folded blanket I keep on the landing shelf had been moved. I said nothing. He came down at lunchtime and sat across from me at the kitchen table without looking at me directly. I made tomato soup from the tin, the way he has liked since he was small. I set the bowl in front of him. After a long silence, he said, "Gran, did you ever get any awards for the Arts Center?" I ate a spoonful of soup. "Here and there," I said. "Like what kind?" I looked out the window. "The sort that sit in boxes in attics," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the newspaper article in the cedar box, the one from 2009. "That was about you?" I nodded. "It said you turned down your own salary for 3 years so the center could keep its children's program." "That was a long time ago, sweetheart." He watched my hands, the photograph with the woman in the red blazer. "Who was she?" "Her name was Adrienne Clarkson," I said. "She was the Governor General at the time." He went very still for 4 full seconds. Then he looked down at his soup. "You could have told us," he said quietly. "You could have asked," I said. "But that's not a criticism, honey. That's just the truth." He ate. He did not say anything else. But that evening I noticed he had written something in the Notes app on his phone. I did not ask what. When my daughter picked him up 3 days later, she was on her phone the entire driveway visit. She kissed me on the cheek without quite making contact. My grandson got into the car and did not open his phone once for the entire time I could see them through the front window. That night he sent me a single text, "I'm going to pay more attention." I sent back 3 words, "I know you will." 3 weeks before Mother's Day, Quentin Voss drove up from the valley to have lunch with me. He came with a folder and a pot of his wife's soup, because Quentin has never arrived anywhere without food and a folder simultaneously. He sat across from me and explained. The Harborview Board needed to restructure the endowment. The Canada Council had been in contact about naming me an honorary fellow, and there was one more thing, which he said last, in the way people save the thing they most want to say. The Governor-General's Performing Arts Awards, the call to the arts honor. They had submitted my name 2 years prior. The public announcement was scheduled for the second Tuesday of May. I sat very still. "Did you know?" I said. "I nominated you," he said, in 2022. He drank his coffee. "The National Arts Centre in Ottawa would like you present for the ceremony, Monday, May the 13th. I looked at the paper calendar on the kitchen wall, the kind Frank had always insisted on, because he said screens don't hold dates the way paper does. May 12th was Mother's Day. "What if I flew Sunday evening?" I said. A long pause. "Is there a reason for the timing?" "There will be a family dinner." I looked out the window, at the center. An even longer pause. "In the Lenora Ashby Room?" "In the Lenora Ashby Room." He set his coffee cup down. He picked it back up. He set it down again. "Lenora." "I know." "Shall I speak with the catering manager?" "Please," I said. "And Quentin, the card they have on file for the account, could you have it removed?" He nodded. He did not smile. He is not a man who smiles at things like this. But there was something in his expression that Frank would have recognized. After he left, I called the Air Canada line and booked a seat on the Sunday evening flight out of Stanfield. I sat with the confirmation number in my hand for a while after hanging up. Then I drove to the cemetery on Windsor Street, where Frank is buried, under a stand of birch trees that he would have liked, and I sat on the bench beside the stone for a full hour. "It's time, love," I said out loud. The birch trees moved slightly in the May wind. "I'm going." The Saturday before Mother's Day, my son called at 6:15 in the evening. He did not preamble. The booking was confirmed. 14 people, 6:30. They needed the card on file. "Your card," he said. "It's how we've always done it." "I know how we've always done it," I said. "Sweetheart, why this venue?" A small pause. My wife wanted somewhere with a reputation. Her parents are coming. I felt my hand still on the counter. "Tell her it's a lovely choice." I hung up. I called Quentin. "My daughter-in-law's parents will be there, Maurice and Carol Drummond." Silence on his end. "Maurice Drummond? The Maurice Drummond who was on the advisory council in 2004? "The same." "Lenora." His voice was very quiet. "He helped you apply for the Heritage Canada grant. He was in that building when it was still a shell." "I know." "He'll recognize the room." "I know," I said again. I sat at the kitchen table after we hung up. I looked at Frank's photograph above the sideboard, the one from our 20th anniversary, in the garden, the hydrangeas enormous behind him, his face creased laughing at something I had said. "You arranged this, didn't you?" I said out loud. The kitchen did not answer, but the light moved 1 inch across the floor. The Friday before, my daughter-in-law called at 5:40 to confirm. "Dress up," she said pleasantly. "It's not your usual sort of venue, black tie adjacent. I'll wear something appropriate. And please, don't bring up any health things at the table. My parents are coming, and I'd like the evening to be light." I felt a small muscle in my jaw move once. "I won't bring anything up," I said. "Enjoy your weekend." I walked back to Frank's study. I sat in his chair. I picked up the letter from the folder, and this time I read it. It was written on his cream notepaper, undated, in the handwriting that always looked more certain than he felt. "Len, if you're reading this, I went first. That was always my plan, though you argued with me about it. Listen, you built something real. The children know pieces of it, only the pieces they were handed. Don't wait for them to ask for the rest. Go back to the work. The board will know what to do. So will Quentin. Trust him. There is a folder on the bottom shelf with everything you'll need, including the letter I wrote to the Governor-General's office in 2021 supporting your nomination. I did it without telling you. I hope you're a little bit angry. I love you. Frank." I sat on the floor of his study for 45 minutes. Then I stood, went to the kitchen, and poured a small glass of the whiskey he had brought back from Cape Breton the summer before he died. I drank it slowly. I thought about 25 years of a thing, and what it weighs when you finally pick it up. At 10 o'clock, I wrote 2 letters by hand and sealed them with the red wax seal I had used for formal correspondence since the center's first year. I drove them to Harborview and left them with the Saturday evening catering manager, a woman named Brianna, who had been working in that room since she was an apprentice in 2008. She took the envelopes with 2 hands. "Read it the way I wrote it," I said. "I will, Ms. Ashby." I drove home. I recorded a voicemail on my phone, 24 seconds, listened once, and saved it. At 10:30, I called my grandson. "Sunday evening," I said. "Just watch." A pause. "Gran, where are you going?" "Ottawa." "There's something I should have done sooner." "Okay," he said. There was the quality in his voice that meant he was doing math his mother had not taught him to do. "I'll watch." The suitcase was already by the door. I had packed it the night before. One dress, the wool blazer Frank had bought me in Edinburgh in 2007, the framed photograph from the 2009 Heritage Canada ceremony. My mother's braided bracelet that she had worn for 30 years and left me in a manila envelope with a card that read, "For your wrist on the days you forget you're somebody." Sunday, May the 12th. I made tea. I read the Saturday paper. 3 Mother's Day texts came through at 8:15. My son, "Happy Mother's Day. See you tonight." My daughter, "Happy day, Mum so." My grandson, "I love you, Gran. Pay attention to everything." I answered only my grandson, "I love you. You too." At 9:30, I drove to Windsor Street. I sat with Frank for 20 minutes. The birch trees were coming into leaf, pale and new. "It's today," I said. The bench was warm under my hand. I drove home. I put on the wool blazer, my mother's bracelet. I left my wedding ring on my left hand. At 6:10, the cab arrived. The driver, a young man named Yusuf, was cheerful and did not need conversation, which I appreciated. I asked him to take Barrington Street through the North End. We passed Harborview at 6:19. The valet stand was set up. A silver Audi was pulling in. I could see the back of my daughter-in-law's camel coat as she guided my son toward the entrance. At the edge of the frame, my grandson's gray hoodie. He had his phone in his hand. I did not slow down. "Stanfield, please," I said. Yusuf nodded. What happened inside the Harborview Arts Center that evening I did not see. I learned it afterward, from my grandson, from Quentin, from Brianna, and from Maurice Drummond, who wrote me a careful 4-page letter 3 weeks later and told me everything in the patient language of a man who had spent 40 years on boards of directors. 6:30, the Lenora Ashby Room. The walls are hung with photographs from the center's 26 years. Opening night 1998, the Heritage Canada ceremony in 2009, the 25th anniversary gala. The center's archivist had rehung them carefully the previous Thursday on Quentin's instruction. My daughter-in-law arrived first. She had requested the head of the table be kept for Mother. Brianna said, "Of course, Mrs. Ashby's instructions have been confirmed." My daughter-in-law nodded. She had assumed this referred to herself. The family arrived over the next 14 minutes. My son, my daughter-in-law, their 2 children, my daughter and her husband, my grandson, my daughter-in-law's parents, Maurice and Carol Drummond. 3 others I did not know well. The empty chair at the head of the table. My son spoke quietly to Brianna at the door. "My mother, can you confirm she has a reservation, Lenora Ashby?" Brianna's pause was exactly as small as it needed to be. "Mrs. Ashby's arrangements have been confirmed. She has left instructions." My son did not pursue it. My grandson sat in the chair closest to the east wall, opened his phone, and began quietly recording. The menus were leather-bound. At the top of the first page, in the center's standard italic typeface, was a line that has appeared there for 3 years, the Lenora Ashby Room, in recognition of the founding director of Harborview Arts Center, 1998 to 2022. My grandson read it once. He looked up at the wall. He found the photograph from the 2009 Heritage Canada ceremony. Me at 53, beside the Heritage Minister, both of us squinting slightly into the photographer's flash. He looked at it for a long moment. He did not say anything. The first round of drinks was poured. My daughter-in-law ordered 2 bottles of a Niagara Peninsula Pinot Noir at $240 each. By the time the appetizers were cleared, the table had committed to approximately $1,800 before a single entree was ordered. My daughter-in-law was holding court about a charity auction her committee was chairing. My daughter laughed at something and then said, loud enough for the table to carry, "Mum's not going to make it tonight, you know." Said she was flying to Ottawa. Can you imagine? Drama. A small, comfortable laugh. She's probably watching Coronation Street in her dressing gown. My grandson did not look up from his menu. Maurice Drummond, at the far end of the table, went very quiet. He leaned toward his wife and said something that was later told to me as, "Carol, this is the Lenora Ashby Room." His wife followed his gaze to the wall, her hand stilled on her wine glass. My daughter-in-law was scanning the menu. "This is lovely. Honestly, I don't know why we've never come here before." She smiled at her mother. I found it through a friend. She said it's the best private dining in the city. She did not notice that her father had set down his fork. At 7:55, the desserts were ordered. Coffees were poured. The room had grown warm and comfortable in the way of long dinners where people believe the evening has gone very well. My daughter-in-law leaned toward my daughter with the intimate carrying whisper she used when she wanted others to overhear something while appearing not to intend it. "It's a shame, honestly. This is exactly the kind of place your mother should have experienced at least once. But I suppose she always struck me as more of a Tim Hortons person." A small laugh. "No offense." My daughter did not laugh. She looked at her wine glass. My grandson stood up. He crossed the room to the east wall. He stopped in front of the 2009 photograph. He read the small caption on the brass plate beneath it, the one the archivist had polished the previous Thursday. He came back to the table and sat down. My daughter-in-law's younger child, 6 years old, pointed at the wall. "Daddy, who's the lady in the big picture?" My son glanced over. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Someone from the Arts Center, I think." My grandson said it quietly, before he had quite decided to. "That's Gran, with the Heritage Minister. She received the Arts Leadership Medal that year." 4 seconds of complete silence. Then Brianna came through the door, carrying a leather folio. She set it at my daughter-in-law's place, the account for this evening and a letter from Mrs. Ashby. My daughter-in-law's hand, reaching for her wine, stopped mid-air. "Per Mrs. Ashby's instructions," Brianna said. My daughter-in-law opened the folio. The bill was clipped inside, $3,214. At the bottom, in printed text, "Card on file removed at account holder's request, May 10th. My son reached across for the folio. He looked at the total. He looked at Brianna. "Where is my mother?" "En route to Ottawa, sir. She has asked me to read a letter aloud with the board chair's permission." Brianna looked toward the side door. Quentin walked in from the dining room entrance. He had been sitting at the bar since 6 o'clock, which no one had known. He nodded once at Brianna. She broke the red wax seal with the edge of her thumb. She unfolded the letter. She looked at my son, then my daughter, then my daughter-in-law. She began to read. Her voice was steady. She had worked in that room for 11 years. "To my family, and the people you have brought tonight. I love you. I have loved you for the whole of your lives, and I intend to go on doing so. This evening, you are seated in a room that bears my name. On the wall behind you is a photograph of the woman who built this place from a $62,000 federal grant and 3 good friends. That woman wore her mother's bracelet to the ceremony in 2009 because her mother had told her it was for the days you forget you're somebody. I am on a flight to Ottawa, where tomorrow morning I will receive the Governor General's Performing Arts Award. The call to the arts honor. The public announcement is scheduled for Tuesday. The Harborview Arts Center was founded by me in 1998, with your father Frank as my closest collaborator and my most constant believer. The building you are sitting in exists because of choices I made before some of you were born. The hall upstairs bears his name. This room bears mine. The bill is yours. The card on file has been removed. I will not be paying. Your father wrote me a letter before he died and asked me to stop making myself small for people who had stopped trying to see me. So I am done. Come and find me when you are ready. I will be at the table. With love, Mum. Brianna folded the letter. She set it on the linen beside my daughter-in-law's plate with both hands. The room did not move. Then Maurice Drummond stood up. He was 71 years old, and his knees were not good, but he stood with the full deliberate weight of a man who had made a decision. He walked the length of the private dining room and stopped beside my son's chair. Your mother founded this arts center when I was on the Halifax Regional Planning Committee, he said. She came to 3 consecutive public meetings to defend the Barrington Street zoning variance. She was the only person in the room who had read the full municipal code before arriving. He paused. I have been a patron of this building for 20 years. I sat in the Franklin Ashby Hall the night it was named for your father. I did not know until tonight that your mother was the woman who built all of it. He looked at his daughter, my daughter-in-law, for a moment. You said something at dinner last week about her not fitting in places like this. My daughter-in-law's face went the color of chalk. This place, Maurice said quietly, is hers. He walked back to his seat. He sat down. He did not look at anyone else. My daughter-in-law's mother, Carol, reached across the table and placed her hand over her daughter's without speaking. My grandson stood. He had been filming since Brianna set the folio down. He walked to Quentin, who was still standing near the door, and held out his hand. Sir, he said, my grandfather helped build this place. Quentin shook his hand. Your grandmother built this place. Your grandfather believed in her. That is a different thing, and both of them matter. My grandson nodded once. He turned and walked past his mother without looking at her. He walked out the front door of the Harborview Arts Center with his phone in his hand. My daughter, wait. He paused in the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder. I'll call Gran when she lands. Then he was gone. He booked a car to Stanfield. He sat at the gate for 2 hours and edited the video on his phone, then uploaded it just before midnight with a single caption. My grandmother built this room. Her family just found out. By the time my plane touched down in Ottawa, the video had 240,000 views. By Tuesday afternoon, when the Governor General's office issued the press release, it had 3.1 million. Ottawa, Monday morning. I walked off the jet bridge into the pale light of the National Arts Center atrium and found Quentin's assistant holding a card that said Ashby in neat black letters, which made me laugh out loud in a way I had not laughed in some time. I turned on my phone, 41 messages. I opened only my grandson's. I love you, Gran. I filmed it. I'll send everything. Mum is upset. I'm not sure she understands yet why. Then, sent an hour later, I think I want to study arts administration. I typed back, come to Ottawa next month. I'll show you around. He answered in 40 seconds, yes. The aftermath arrived in pieces, the way things do. My son called twice. I answered the second call. We talked for 11 minutes. I told him I was not angry, which was true. I told him I would be in Halifax in September. He said he would like to take me to dinner. I said I would let him choose the restaurant. My daughter did not call for 6 weeks. When she did, she asked if she could visit. I said yes. She came on a Tuesday and I made coffee, and we sat in the kitchen for 3 hours. She cried once, near the end. I handed her a dish towel because I had run out of tissues. She laughed through it, which was the first time I had heard her laugh like that in years. We are working on it. That is enough for now. My daughter-in-law did not contact me directly. The Junior League committee she had been chairing lost its venue sponsor, a company whose owner had been a Harborview donor since 2003. 2 weeks after the video was posted, I learned this from Quentin, who learned it from the board treasurer, and I did not consider it my business to feel anything about it one way or another. My grandson enrolled in a dual program at Dalhousie in September, English and Arts Administration. I paid the first year's tuition directly. He has his grandfather's eyes and his grandmother's stubbornness, and he is going to be fine. Maurice Drummond wrote me a letter on heavyweight cream stationery, asking if he could take me and Quentin to dinner in the autumn. I wrote back, "Come in October. Bring your wife." The Governor General's ceremony was on a Tuesday morning in a room that smelled of old wood and occasion. I wore the wool blazer Frank had bought me in Edinburgh, my mother's bracelet on my left wrist. Quentin sat in the front row. Afterward, a woman from the Canada Council asked what I was planning to do next, and I told her, "Whatever I like." She laughed. I meant it entirely. I am 68 years old. I spent 25 years building something real, and another decade making myself quiet about it, which I had told myself was modesty, and which I now understand was something else entirely. There is a difference between not boasting and not existing, and I had confused them for too long. Frank knew. He always knew. He wrote it down on cream notepaper and left it on the bottom shelf for me to find when I was ready. That is the kind of man he was. My mother's bracelet is on my wrist right now, at this kitchen table in Halifax, on a May morning, with the harbor gray and soft outside the window. I have a name. I have a room that bears it. I have a grandson who filmed, the night the family finally looked up at the wall. The rest will follow, or it won't. That is my story.